The Nats Chat end-of-season podcast party will be at Walters at 7 p.m. on Friday night, October 10th. Spread the word among your friends. We're aiming for our highest attendance yet to celebrate our 5th season of coverage. Walters is located across the street from the ballpark.
The pitch. Swing a line drive up the middle, base hit center field. This one to Young on 2 hops. Marcy trying to score. Young trying to throw him out. The throw through is offline and not in time. Marcy scores. RBI single for Wagaman, and it's 2-0 Marlins.
He threw pretty good. We didn't hit today, but, we got a good road trip, a winning road trip, and the guys are playing hard.
You just haven't done that in 2 weeks. It's much different being out there than, on the side in between. So, but that was expected. We figured didn't think we'd be just, dialed in right away.
And welcome to Nats Chat. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. My usual co-host, MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman. He is off for this installment of the podcast, but I'm joined by the owner and executive producer of Nats Chat, Tim Shovers. The Nats on Thursday evening suffered their 12th shutout loss in MLB's 2025 regular season, in which the Nats now are 60-86, worst record in the National League East, second worst record in the National League. A 5-0 loss at the Miami Marlins for a split of a 4-game series, though. We did have a good return outing for starting pitcher MacKenzie Gore from the 15-day injured list, and we on Thursday morning had a report that the in-person portion of the Nats search for a head of baseball operations has begun. You on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify can both rate the podcast and write reviews of the podcast. 5-star ratings are greatly appreciated. Positive reviews are greatly appreciated. These things help us out a lot. We thank you very much for doing them. Coming up later in the show, a special treat, a conversation that Tim had with the voice of the Nats AA affiliate, the Harrisburg Senators, Terry Byrom. A Sunday is Terry's final broadcast for Harrisburg, ending a run of 20 years. But Tim, this 4-game series got off to such a nice start, right? The 15-7 win on Monday evening, the 7-5 win on Tuesday evening, but the Nats end up losing the final 2 games by a combined score of 13-3. A pretty lifeless offensive showing by the Nats on Thursday evening.
Certainly was, and it feels like a long time ago that they had won 4 in a row. We were talking about, are they going to catch the Braves and the Marlins in third place? And all of a sudden, now they're 8 wins back of Miami, and the season's shrinking, and it's looking less and less likely that would be in play. A lifeless night at a lifeless park, 2 bad teams playing mid-September. I will say, though, not one for moral victories, but this is a moral victory in that MacKenzie Gore took the mound and looked healthy, and it looked like that brief IL stint was just that, and not, as you guys said, a longer thing. It was truly a 2-week thing, and big picture, that is really all that matters.
Yeah, that's the A topic coming out of this game, that MacKenzie Gore was back and he looked good. So the Nats on Thursday afternoon announced having reinstated Gore from the 15-day injured list. He had been on that since August 30th, retroactive to August 27th. This due to left shoulder inflammation. He missed the minimum 15 days. That was it. And as I'm sure many people listening recall, Gore had been struggling. But Gore on Thursday evening did well. 2 runs in 5 innings. He gave up 4 hits, all of which were singles. He issued 2 walks. He recorded 4 strikeouts. He threw a good number of strikes, 78 pitches, 50 strikes, 28 balls. And both of the runs that Gore allowed came in the bottom of the first, during which he gave up 3 singles and a sac fly. So he did not get off to the best of starts. And part of that was rooted in some bad defense. The first single was a leadoff single by Xavier Edwards on a grounder that was not cleanly fielded by shortstop C.J. Abrams. But beyond that first inning, I thought Gore did a good job. He pretty clearly was on a workload limit in this game, just going the 5 innings, 78 pitches. But man, especially given how he had been struggling, for him to come back and do as he did, 2 thumbs up on that. I think you have to be very happy with this if you're a Nats fan.
Definitely. 5 innings, 1 bad frame off the top, settles down, almost has a strikeout per inning, has 4 strikeouts on the night on 78 pitches. That ERA, though, Al, this is cosmetic, but it's creeping upwards. It's at 4.14. It's starting to feel more and more likely that his all-star season is going to end with a 4+ ERA, which is a real bummer. Not that that's a huge deal. But yes, I'm with you. It's in the bank. Sounds like he's good to make the next start. And you just, as a Nats fan, you pat yourself on the back on this one.
There are not many opportunities left to shrink that ERA, but I'm with you. I do want that thing under 4. You know, this season was going so well for him. I would hate for him to wind up with an ERA at 4 or worse, but we'll see. But Gore looked good in this game, that he only has to spend 15 days on the injured list. I didn't know what to think when they put him on that IL. You put a pitcher, especially a younger pitcher, on an injured list super late in a lost season, and you say to yourself, all right, there's at least a decent chance this guy's season is done, that he's back and is poised to make multiple starts the rest of the way. Terrific news. Now, the Nats for now are going with a 6-man rotation. The corresponding roster move to the Nats reinstating MacKenzie Gore from the 15-day injured list was them late night on Wednesday night, announcing having option reliever Orlando Rebolta to AAA Rochester. So at least for now, the Nats do have a 6-man rotation. When it came to the Nats bullpen in this 5-0 loss at the Marlins on Thursday evening, 3 Nats relievers combined to allow 3 runs, 2 earned in 3 innings. Mason Thompson tossed a scoreless bottom of the 6th. Cole Henry tossed a scoreless and hitless bottom of the 7th, despite issuing back-to-back 1-out walks. And Connor Pilkington allowed 3 runs, 2 earned in 1 inning. He, in the bottom of the 8th, allowed 3 runs on 2 doubles, a walk, a sac fly, and a throwing error by shortstop C.J. Abrams, who made an errant throw in throwing home on a 2-run double by Eric Wagaman to left field, where, by the way, left fielder Dalen Lyle whiffed in an attempt at a diving catch.
Pilkington lets it go. Swinging a line drive left field. Lyle coming on. Dives, can't get it. The ball rolls by him all the way to the wall. Marcy scores. Mesa rounding third. He's coming in. Abrams' throw toward the plate is offline.
We did see more bad defense by the Nats in this game. I mentioned what happened with Abrams on the Xavier Edwards single in the first inning. We had the Abrams error in this 3-run 8th inning. We had Lyle failing in the attempt at a diving catch. We've talked about this plenty of times, the Nats' bad defense this season, but I think it is so worth pointing out. This is a real issue with this team. And, you know, when we get into like the struggles of the pitching staff would look a lot better if the defense was a lot better. Not that the pitching staff would have, spectacular numbers, but I do think at least some of these guys would have stats that would be a lot more appealing if this defense was more adept at turning batted balls, turning balls in play into outs, and was more adept at just not committing these gruesome errors that lead to these, if not blow-up innings, then innings in which multiple runs are scored. And we saw another one of those innings in this game.
There's way too many errors. We've talked about this for years. I am growing less and less patient with C.J. Abrams at shortstop. I'm going to say that out loud. I know Eli Willits is a long, long way away, but long term, I don't think C.J. Abrams is going to be the shortstop for the Washington Nationals. I don't know what long term means in this instance. When the new brass comes in, I want defense to be such a high priority in a way that it just doesn't feel right now. It has been allowed to happen for way too long. I mean, you just see, for instance, when Patrick Corbin came back and you saw that his numbers, his ERA was so vastly different than the past few years, and then his peripherals were all the same. That, to me, just said it all. And yeah, Lyle whiffing, that one happens. But Abrams making a throwing error, that feels commonplace.
C.J. Abrams is under team control through the 2028 season. For all of the talk about whether the Nats will/should trade MacKenzie Gore, I think there's very much a conversation to be had about C.J. Abrams from the standpoint of if you're not going to pay him big money via a contract extension, either because ownership isn't going to pony up the money or because you don't think he's worth it, then I do think you have to be very open to trading him, perhaps as soon as this offseason. And, when it comes to what Abrams is as a shortstop, look, he's not a bad shortstop. He's a good shortstop. He's a good offensive player, but he's not a good defensive shortstop. And I think we're seeing enough here to be able to say that. And I brought this up with Mark a few episodes back of, long term, should the idea be that Abrams plays second base? And I think more and more you have to be open to that if you're not already open to that, because the defense just is not that good. He has the tools to be good defensively. He's a good athlete for sure, but the defensive performance, especially this season, just has not been very good. Hey, a great supporter of the Nats Chat podcast for years now has been Window Nation. If you want new windows, if you need new windows, contact Window Nation. Tell Window Nation that Al Galdi from the Nats Chat podcast sent you. That helps out this podcast a lot, and that gets you a great deal on great Window Nation windows. In fact, now is the best time of year to get new windows. Whether you have old, drafty windows or cheap builder-grade windows, September is the perfect month to protect your home from cooler weather. And right now, Window Nation is offering its most popular offer: buy 2 replacement windows, get 2 for free. Plus, you won't pay any interest, pay any monthly payments, or pay any down payment for 2 years. 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. With Window Nation, you get top quality windows from a trusted company, all at a reasonable price, because Window Nation knows that replacing windows is an investment, and Window Nation wants to make the investment affordable to you. And do not miss this great offer from Window Nation. For listeners of the Nats Chat podcast, the offer is good until September 30th. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and you pay nothing for 2 years. 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. That's 866-90-NATION or windownation.com. And tell Window Nation that Al Galdi from the Nats Chat podcast sent you.
2 balls, 2 strikes. The set for Peterson. He kicks and he fires. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. The game is over. And the Nationals are blanked 5-0 in the series finale. 12th time this year the Nationals have been shut out. They'll settle for a split of this 4-game series in Miami and a 4-3 road trip between Chicago and Lone Depot Park.
The Nats offense in this 5-0 loss at the Marlins on Thursday evening was not very good. The Nats, really a lifeless offensive performance, like we said. No runs, just 7 hits, no walks, 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. All 7 of the hits were singles, so 0 extra base hits for the Nats in this game. The Nats did hit some balls hard, but the results were not good. The Marlins starting pitcher, Ryan Weathers, he ended up tossing 5 scoreless innings. Left fielder James Wood did not play in this game. He got the game off. Same for second baseman Luis Garcia Jr. And I tell you, Tim, you look at the lineup, and you had C.J. Abrams in the leadoff spot, okay? Dylan Cruz, number 2. Riley Adams, number 3. Dalen Lyle, number 4. Andres Chaparro, 5th. Brady House, 6th. Paul DeJong, 7th. Nasim Nunez, 8th. Jacob Young, 9th. You looked at that lineup coming into the game, and you said, well, it is the Marlins, but also that's not an imposing lineup. And the Nats, for a while here, have not been, consistently good offensively. Had some good games in this series, but the lineup sort of said to you, this could be one of those games, and sure enough, this was one of those games. The Nats getting shut out.
No matter how much James Wood is slumping or struggling, when he is out of the lineup, just that one bat, man, does it get exposed how few big sticks they have in the lineup. And that's been that way for a while. I do like seeing Cruz in the second spot. I don't care if his numbers don't match it, just from an experience standpoint. I like that Lyle has been in the cleanup spot there. But yeah, I mean, Chaparro hitting 5th. Like, Chaparro is probably not going to be in the majors in 6 months. So yeah, that's a tough look.
Josh Bell also did not start in this game, although he did come off the bench to pinch hit. There just are so few reliable hitters in this game. And look, I know that guys get days off even late in lost seasons, but, for all of those days off to happen with this game, it just set up perfectly for the Nats to get shut out. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So next up for the Nats is a 7-game homestand comprised of 7 games over 6 days. First up is a 3-game series against the Pittsburgh Pirates at Nationals Park. Game 1, Friday evening at 6:45. Brad Lord will be the Nats starting pitcher. Game 2, Saturday afternoon at 4:05. Andrew Alvarez will be the Nats starting pitcher. And Game 3, Sunday morning at 11:35. Cade Cavalli will be the Nats starting pitcher. Now, also with the Nats on Thursday was an interesting item from Barry Svrluga, columnist for the Washington Post, via a post on X on Thursday morning. Quote, "The in-person portion of the national search for a head of baseball operations has begun. Different segments of ownership have started having dinners with candidates, fits with timing to make a decision on a hire by the end of the season." End quote. I do want to say this. We know that Nats ownership, the Lerner family, not exactly known for being aggressive and proactive. So that the Lerner ownership group has this head of baseball operations search moving to where it seemingly will be done by the end of the Nats season is good. I think this is a good thing. Now, I all along wanted the Lerner family to conduct a good faith search, talk to a lot of people, be willing to step outside your comfort zone. It sounds like, at the very least, the Lerners are talking to a bunch of people. It sounds like this is a legitimate search and that conversations are being had. Now we'll see what the end result is in terms of who gets hired. Clearly, you want it to be that ownership spends some money here and trying to beef up the front office. There is so much work that needs to be done with Nationals baseball operations, but I do think that the sooner that who is running Nats baseball ops beyond this season is settled, the better. And if you can get that settled by the end of this season, that's a good thing. You can maybe hit the ground running come the offseason. So I think this is good that this search is moving along, and we hopefully do get some resolution in just a few weeks here.
Definitely an encouraging sign. It seems like it's not going to drag out until late October, which we all wanted to avoid. On these sorts of stories, this is just my opinion from over the years and experience. I very much trust Barry Svrluga on this sort of thing. I feel like when management wants something out there, he's a common journalist that they go to magnify their message. So I believe that there. It just feels more and more like Mike DiBartolo is not going to be the number one guy in charge in a few months. He might be number two. I've always been a little confused as to the delineation of duties sort of with the head of baseball ops and the GM. Like, I straight up don't understand what the difference is. I feel like that's more your wheelhouse than mine, but I just like that they are being proactive and the ownership is aware of the calendar that this needs to happen.
Yeah. And we don't take that for granted, knowing how things have gone with the ownership group in other scenarios in the past. There's no one structure that you have to have. And Mike Rizzo had the title of both president of baseball operations and general manager. What you do see a lot of teams do now is you have a general overseer and a president of baseball operations. And then you have a GM beneath the overseer, and the GM is the guy who handles the nuts and bolts of the front office and handles a lot of the day-to-day stuff. That's why a lot of organizations don't necessarily have the overseer, because you don't have to have that. But I do think there's a lot to be said for it never hurts to have multiple smart people in high positions in your baseball ops department. And, in this case, you have a guy in Mike DiBartolo who has been here for years, seems to be a smart guy, seems to have a really good understanding of where the Nats have gone wrong and what needs to be happening moving forward. And perhaps as important as anything, has an understanding of ownership and how to deal with ownership and where things went well and maybe not so well with Mike Rizzo and the Lerner family. And so if Mike DiBartolo is retained, even if it is him working beneath a president of baseball operations, I would be fine with that. I think that's actually a dynamic that could prove to be strong. So we'll see. So we don't know exactly who's being interviewed. Some names have been out there, but we don't know for sure, who's getting talked to. We don't know what those people are saying. We don't know what those people envision. We don't know if any of those people would get along with Mike DiBartolo or if there would be friction. So there's a lot of stuff here we don't have. But I think 100% you got to talk to a bunch of people. If you're the Lerner family, you really have to be open to where have we gone wrong and how do we make this right? And of course, all of this hinges on, is ownership still actually committed to owning the team and spending what is necessary to make this baseball ops department what it should be? And that's a big question, and we don't know the answer to that. And that brings me to this, and I think this is almost kind of funny here, but, we talk about the search for a head of baseball ops and interviews that are happening. And now the in-person portion of the search has begun per Barry Svrluga. I think it may well be that these candidates are interviewing the Lerners as much as the Lerners are interviewing the candidates. Because if you are a bright, rising mind in the world of MLB front offices, you're not just going to jump to come work here. You want to pick your spot. And you want to know from ownership, are you committed to spending on players? Are you committing to spending on infrastructure? What are you willing to equip me with in terms of staffing, that kind of thing? And so I would love to know the specifics of these conversations, because I'd be willing to bet that there's a good bit of interviewing going on from the candidate to ownership, as opposed to just interviewing going on from ownership to the candidate.
Well, I think one big question that anyone would have at dinner, if they're being interviewed, is asking the Lerners, what's the television situation come next year? It's a pretty big piece of revenue. We haven't heard a thing about it, and it's September, So that would be my first question if I were them. Totally would want to suss out what's going on. What's your ownership structure? Who am I answering to? How many bosses do I have? Is it just Mark Lerner, or do I have 7 people in the family I have to answer to? I'm totally with you on that, Al.
It's interesting, too, that Barry in the post on X wrote it as follows, quote, different segments of ownership have started having dinners with candidates, end quote. That's kind of interesting. Different segments of ownership. I've brought this up in the past, and I don't think this gets talked about enough. When we talk about the Lerners, we're talking about actually a pretty expansive ownership group. Like, it's not just 1 or 2 people. It is a number of people making up that ownership group. And so one of the things I've wondered is, okay, who exactly is deciding on who is running Nationals baseball operations beyond this season? We know that Mark Lerner is the managing principal owner, but beyond him are a good number of other people who make up the Nats front office. And so, you say to yourself, like, is this just a Mark Lerner decision? Is, he sort of at the mercy of everyone else in the ownership group? And when Barry talks about different segments of ownership having started having dinners with candidates, who exactly are those people? How are those segments being decided? Who makes up each segment? Like, I don't know. There's a lot here that's kind of intriguing. Heck, where are they going to dinner? I'd like to know that. Like, what restaurants are being frequented here in terms of these interviews of head of baseball ops candidates for the Nats? Maybe Walters. Hopefully, at some point, one of these meals happens at Walters. I'd love for that to be the case.
Oh, that would be fantastic. My first guess is Capitol Grill, if I had to totally throw one out there. But I'm way off the DC restaurant game, so I'll stop there.
Well, if anyone sees any of these dinners happening, take a photo. That would be great. Send it to us. We'll post it and give you full credit. But yes, be on the lookout for any of you who are out and about in Washington, D.C. this weekend. If you see what looks like the Nats ownership group having dinner with a head of baseball ops candidate, you may well be seeing exactly what you think you're seeing. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We have a website you could check out too, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. So for Tim Shovers, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast. And we leave you now with a conversation that Tim had a few years back with the voice of the Nats AA affiliate, the Harrisburg Senators, Terry Byrom. Terry has done some great work for us over the years in terms of providing updates on the Senators. And Sunday is Terry's final broadcast for Harrisburg. We salute him on a terrific run, and we thank him for his work for the Nats Chat Podcast.
And the pitch. Lined into shallow center field. This one is falling. It is a base hit. Robert Hassel, the third, scores. And Dylan Cruz with the game winner. 3-2. The Senators walk off the Richmond Flying Squirrels. A triple by Hassel and a single by Cruz.
Pleased to be joined by the voice of the Harrisburg Senators, the AA affiliate for the Washington Nationals, Terry Byrom. You've heard Terry before give updates for us here on the Nats Chat Podcast. I'm in person with Terry as we're watching batting practice here at Prince George's Stadium for the Bowie Bay Sox. They're going to host the Harrisburg Senators. So it's if you're in the DMV and you're a Nats fan and you want to check out the AA team, this is the best chance yet as they're playing in PG County this week. Terry, thank you very much for joining us. Before we get into the team, and there's been a lot of news with Harrisburg recently, why don't you give the listeners a backstory of how you landed in this position and how long you've been the voice of the Harrisburg Senators?
Well, I think landing in the position was sort of luck. I found out about the opening through a mutual friend. And once I found out about it, applied, had an interview, and we went from there a long time ago. So my first season was 2005, which was the first season the Nationals were in Washington. I went to that first exhibition game in Washington at RFK. So I've been fortunate in all of these years to just every player that has gone through the Nationals organization that's made it to the big leagues has come through Harrisburg one time or another. So that's made it a lot of fun to watch the Nationals kind of rise, be at the peak, and now they're on the rise again. And I think that's fun.
Terry and Mark, both with the organization since 2005 in one way or another. If you are a diehard Nationals radio listener, you've heard Terry before. I remember a summer game in 2018 hearing you when the Nats were taking on the Braves. How many games have you called for the Big League Club on the radio?
Just those 4 games that weekend that I filled in for Dave Jagler in Atlanta. Then it was fun. I mean, what can I say? That's what we all try to, the players and the broadcasters, we'd all like to get to the big leagues.
Let's get to the team here. Big news this week with James Wood getting promoted from Wilmington to Harrisburg. Very, very, very small sample size so far. He is playing here today, starting for the Senators. What have you noticed so far? What have you heard? Give us your James Wood scouting report best you can.
Well, I don't think I have much of a scouting report yet. I've had a chance to talk to him a little bit. He seems like a pretty quiet young man. Makes things look easy through 2 games, and he only has 1 hit. I don't really base it on that. Just the way he moves in the outfield and just the way he carries himself and moves in general. And at only 20 years old, I'm excited to see where things go with him. I think the Nationals, I think that trade's going to work out well for the Nationals, and I certainly think James Wood is on his way to being what everybody thought. Sounds like it took him a little while to get used to being in Wilmington, and once he was used to the high A stuff, he'd killed it earlier this month. So I'm really expecting, after a little adjustment period, which is what happens with most players when they go from A to AA, then kind of see where they're really at.
Robert Hassel III, another big name. Now, he hasn't been here very long either. He was in the Fred Nats for a while with a rehab assignment, but a little bit more of a sample size. What have your impressions been so far of Robert Hassel III?
Well, first, what you don't hear about him at all is he is a tremendous outfielder. He plays center field really well, and he gets to Harrisburg has a big outfield. We're 405 to left and right center and 400 to straightaway center, and he tracks down almost everything hit in the air there. He throws well, and so in my view, he is, or in my opinion, I guess, he's a plus outfielder with a plus arm. So that makes him exciting in that way. He runs well, and then at the plate this year, he has made some big strides over when he arrived here last year. He's hitting the ball. He's in a little slump right now over the last 2 or 3 games, which happens, the ebbs and flows of a season. But overall, he's hitting the ball a lot harder, a lot more contact. And the longer he's here in AA, the better I think he'll be.
Who's the ace of the staff, if you will?
Yeah, I'd say right now that's Jackson Rutledge. I think he is, he's pitching the best right now. Mitchell Parker, over his last, I think 4 or 5 starts, he looks good as well. And I think both those guys are on a good path.
Let's sell some tickets here. I have never been to a game at Harrisburg, but I've seen the stadium. I drove up once, just a few hours from the Maryland suburbs. If you live by the I-270, really unique and cool ballpark in City Island, and Harrisburg itself has a lot of things to check out. So why don't you tell Nationals fans who are within driving distance to Harrisburg why they should come and what to expect from your really special ballpark that is in the capital of Pennsylvania?
So aside from the baseball park, we're on an island. And on the island, if you bring kids, there's a steam train that goes around the island, which is pretty cool. There's a mini golf course on the island, and they have some stuff for sale if you're going to spend the day there, ice cream and sandwiches. And then you come to the ballpark, and our ballpark is really fan-friendly. All of the seats are close to the field, which makes it fun. Easy to interact with the players. I think it's a great way to spend an evening, and being on the island makes it's just as unique because, like sitting here at Prince George's Stadium, there's nothing wrong with the ballpark, but it doesn't feel nearly as alive as an afternoon on City Island at F&B Field, no matter what time of the day you're there, because people walk across. There's a walking bridge from downtown Harrisburg, and people are constantly doing exercise, walking around the island, and there's just so much activity on the island that it makes it unique and different in that even when you're in the ballpark, you can really feel the vibe of being out and about on the island. So it just makes it a kind of a fun trip if you're coming in from out of town.
Well, final thing here, Terry, thanks so much for joining us. Why don't you tell our listeners where they can hear you on the actual radio and also streaming online? How can they listen to your broadcast?
I think we go all the way down to the Pennsylvania border on 96.5 FM and 95.3 FM, 1400 AM, or online through our website at senatorsbaseball.com.
2 balls, no strikes. Here's the 2-0 pitch line. It's a base hit into center field. Cook is up with it around third. Heading home is Hassel. The throw, the slide. He's safe. hits another rocket, 114 miles an hour into center